All right, good morning. Thank you for joining me for this session today. I want to begin with an experience for the circulation in the legs, but also kind of branch the sensations to bring the ribs to horizontal, to have the sense of not the kind of the levity of the ribs that we might strive for in a lot of asana focus and posture focus, which is kind of that heart up, lift, which sometimes creates this inner grip, so that we can kind of let the zones of the core spread open and actually support releasing the psoas. So that's something I'm bringing a little focus to today, is releasing the psoas. So since it's a hip flexor, and some of us think of it as core, one way to do that is in relaxing it. So let's start with our back against the bolster. So we're sitting right in front of the bolster. And you want to get a feel here that the thighs have enough elevation. Think of it as thighs up, feet united. And this can sometimes appear to be really perfectly symmetrical. This is where we are pros, right? Baddha Konasana pros. So let's master this one. So I've got my belt around me, buckled up in a loop, and I'll reach it around the tops of my feet. But as I snug up the belt, I want you to slide it so it's at the eyebrows of the buttocks, so it's quite low. It feels like you press down with your thumbs and almost try to snag it as if that sacrum bone popped out, right? But it's sealed in. It's like this, it's an inner pressure, okay? Now I'm going to flip my blocks up so it's even a higher tier under my thighs. And then as I guide back, I have my sandbag nearby. I want you to bridge the gap with this core motion of elongating the ribs, and be sensitive to where your brain, your occiput, right, this occipital ridge, centers onto that upper blanket. So we have that top blanket folded up a little bit higher than a quarter fold, and take the experience rather kind of seriously to support your mind and support your kind of the valve connection to your breathing muscles, as if you were a bit of a science project right now. And then as you put that sand across the upper-ish ribs, right where they intersect, right where the ribs are connecting, it feels kind of like a platform where there's a spring quality to breathing. With sand, you can feel that it is, the possibilities are to open the arms now to the floor, suggesting that you contemplate the ways that you can realize ability to relax. So feel where the hips center and settle. Feel the knees motion and relax them, without trying to tug any deeper on the sensation of stretch. So we're starting with more of a relaxation throughout the lower, mid, and upper body. And once you notice all those quadrants that you're scanning and figuring out how to center them, maybe the blocks go higher, maybe your sand is moved or you take it off temporarily. Rest the eyes back into the brain, feeling what's behind them is what decides things to do. So relax the content that comes from looking, and perhaps as your eyes are centered back, if you have glasses on, you might shift them away for right now. And get the feel of your feet pushing into the belt. Feel the manner of resistance. And the belt ideally helps you relax more. It's snug around the skin. It elaborates on balance for the skin texture. Breathe in, releasing on the out breath. Receive your breath inwards. Relaxing on the out breath. Empty the lungs. You might notice in anything in your environment that comes along, sounds. And come back to that collective consciousness that we are all sharing in this practice. Breathing slow. Exhaling completely, so connecting to others that are in the practice. See if you can bring that to mind. Now with that sand said on the upper bones, the ribs, feel the inhale, and as the arms lift off the ground, they're going to hover, so you still have this horizontal flow through the ribs, spreading outwards. Kind of like you're creating this, this oval shape, right? A circular pattern with your arms. Feel if you can start to move your arms, elbows actually back, and balancing the shoulders. Now this could jut the ribs enough of an angle that you feel it in your back muscles. I recognize that. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is collect the hands together overhead, however close they are to your brain. And then feel when you turn the hands inside out, send them straight back. Try to straighten the arms and manifest that spaciousness, feeling spaces in the side body. Lengthen. So we both are, we're working with horizontal emphasis, but also length. And here you might do little things that you are required to do so your back sensitivity is a little more calm. So I tend to feel my feet push together, feel the buttocks grip a little bit. But now the emphasis really is on flowing through. So what we'll do is center down the seat, if your seat lifted at all there. And then as you separate your hands, start to shift your sand. We're going to move it basically to the thigh tops in a moment. So if it's possible for you to move your hand to your belt and unbuckle, and then as you unthread that piece, bring the knees to point up and feel the arch of the back. Feel the simple things here. Slide that belt away, bring it overhead so the belt is behind you. I tend to put it so it's kind of on my blanket so it'll be easy to grab it. And then I'm going to lift up my rear and slide a block under it. So it's attached to my bolster now. The block is flat. Okay? All right, hopefully that's recognizable. So when the back of the pelvis, or maybe the sense of your tailbone on its flat edge, right? It doesn't feel much like a tailbone perhaps than when you're sitting, but I start to recognize that here. I want you to have the sand that is kind of perched in the upper belly kind of cortex here. If you can put your hands onto that sand or the weight that you have with you, you're going to bring your right knee up and towards your sandbag so you feel the bend in the hinge at the knee. And alternate the foot placement. Bring that foot down, switch sides. Feel the movement in your lower back, almost like you gently swing the hips as you alternate. So the foot that pushes down, that hip might feel like it gradually moves a little. So right foot down, my right buttock feels like it pushes a degree or so out. The opposite knee draws in. So working with psoas control with this core influence. You might work with the foot that's pushing down to kind of scoop the tailbone under. Let's take a couple more of these. Whether it's relatively influential or not, it's adding along the movement style of breathing one breath per movement. Now that we add that idea in, as we're ending that pattern, stretch the legs down and then slide the sandbag over the top. And kind of feel how that sand is capable of reaching out wide. Sometimes it'd be nice if these sandbags were a little bit in a wider realm because they could slope on the legs, but it will require you to bring them close together anyhow. Scrub the heels like you really are trying to scrub the heels on the floor space you're on, and then reach back to your belt. Hold the belt. Now, if the back is tensing, if you have tensing fascia, okay, always consider what's up with my rib cage. Can I open my chest, stretch the hands out wider on your belt to support my lower back? So the lumbar curve, right, is kind of in that arching tradition, but so as lengthens. So we want to find that. Feel the heels reaching. Now, if you perhaps let your feet relax, feel the heel dig a little bit. Notice the difference with back muscles. Go back to flexing your feet for a moment, relaxing your feet. Even if the flexing requires you a degree of effort, it's likely proper for my back muscles. Take the hands out quite wide on the belt. Be generous with your grip. Span the elbows open. Okay, let's keep this in mind, this awareness with the upper frame. I don't know what you keep in your mind in your yoga practice, but this might be a frame that we reflect on coming up. Now, with all these little dips in the back muscles, right, there's a little arch, there's a dip down into the buttocks, there's a dip into the back of the knees. Remove the grip. Notice anything that's gripping. And then I want you to start to move the sand aside as we slide our feet in. Knees point up. See if you can kind of follow some of this with maybe your eyes resting. And then when you're in this bridge position, I want you to push down, directly down into your heel bones. If it gradually pushes you back and you feel your weight shift back like your heels are pushing forward, I want you to keep pushing down. Try to go straight down. Lift up the hips and strengthen through the hamstrings. It's a very tiny lift. And then I'm going to scoot my block out to the side and reach it actually overhead. So put the block overhead, place it on the floor. And then when you roll to your left, see if you can keep a little hold of that block. Just doesn't have to be exaggerated, but feel the lift and feel the knees going together. So the ribs have moved from this horizontal zoning. Okay, it's like we're going to work on our body zoning. And then simplify, let go of the block idea, and then roll into your left hip and your bolster. We're going to set up for a series of kind of sage pose studies, okay? You're going to be studying sageness. Okay, so we have a ball, we have blocks, probably sand, so forth. What we'll start with is going to be a block on the inside of that right leg, and see if you can hold onto your right ankle. Okay, if this is not a possibility in your knee joint, then we're going to pause on the holding of the ankle idea and really work with that block on the inside of the leg and then lean into that bolster. You could scoot it a little bit towards your blankets, want you to focus right now on twisting. So let's say I have my hand holding onto my ankle. I still turn towards my bolster and try to work the way of circulation through the front of that right thigh, through the quad, but also into the psoas. Now, if my right shoulder moves back, if I hold the ankle, that's possible. Think of some of these patterns are slightly intense. Okay, now as you release the grip or you come back from the twist, we're going to start to kind of hunker down into the side sage. Psoas. Okay, you can use a block or a ball on the inside of that right leg. Remember, the ball is a bit more of a responsive surface to the skin fibers, right? So it might be a little more cozy for your skin. And feel if you can get that knee to bend and kind of swing back to stretch all the way through that right thigh and then a little deeper into the right side of the tummy, okay? Now, when I lean into this, I have a generous amount of prop set up here for my lengthening. So I have my bolster between me and the blankets and the block. And if you have that sand, you might help yourself as kind as you can using both hands to kind of situate it to that right side. But as you lean, the right limb overhead will approach reaching on its own pace. So we'll focus today on refining some of these shapes. We'll have a lot of poses that we shuffle through though. So manage the time in the poses that we seem to feel experiencing longer timing in the pose, really trying to iron out the flush motion. So the right hand could reach to the block. Some of us like to find a settling in the pose. And you might even want to be moving a little bit in the position. Since you're in your own space, you have that luxury, I feel, kind of a little bit more comfort with trying new things or make it a little simpler or more challenging, whichever you would prefer. But with that arm spaciousness, right, both arms are working hard to support your back muscles. And if the sand doesn't feel right on your hip, you can move it higher. So it's in the notch between the ribs and the hip. This might feel like a place you could have some support, especially if your back is tight or it's sore, tender, achy. Probably the sand higher would be good. Even if in the beginning it's a little surprising. Feel space inside body. Let the weight of your head rest into the blanket. Now as we begin moving the right hand away from the kind of extreme of reaching, I want you to sort out for a moment when you switch this out to let that right arm gather some momentum. Maybe you stretch open the upper channels of the ribs, which really go high up, right? We have these ribs up here at the collarbones, which are kind of, they look almost like bracelets, right? They're so slender. But then we have the thick ribs, right? So we tend to emphasize those, right? We're oftentimes considering the posture, the uprightness, but give yourself a little fluidity if you have room in your space. to open out through the chest. And then when you feel circling through the shoulder joint, we're going to lower. And I want us to actually come around to find a place of child's pose. So you're going to turn towards the back of your mat space, wherever you're framed. You're going to push the bolster away. You might take the blanket. This is what I would prefer, is to take my top blanket, put it under my seat, on top of my calves. My knees are wide. Stretch my hands forwards. Lean back to my seat. Kind of wriggle my ribs, my arms, the space in the back. And then if you find you can lower your head here, if that's too low, you can put a block under your head. Maybe you could put the ball under your head. I haven't tried that before, but it's tempting, so we'll try. Okay, so don't think you've thought about rolling a ball onto your forehead. So when you're here with the hands position, I want you to feel where there's space. Head can be on floor, head can be on an object, you choose. But working to the really front of the line of the hips. I know some of us, this could be a knee challenge, right? So this height of the blanket underneath you, even if you add a second blanket, might be essential. So it's not as much of a deep angle into the knee joint. So with about 30 more seconds here, hands forward and wide, take the position where your shoulders expand open. Hips settle back. Breathe slow. Now slide the hands to the firm floor space, come up to table. Now when you flip your toes under to come back to a dog pose, I do want you to have a blanket. Now it could be under your knees, it could be a little bit in front right now, but when you lift up and tilt back to an inverted V position, feel where the heels try to stride to the floor. Really work to cool off the back of the knees after dog pose, so after child's pose. So when you reach your heels down, head between arms, nod your head side to side. Now walk your feet forward and or your hands a little back until you can scoot the blanket in so it's underneath your roots of your toes, the balls of the feet. So I step up onto my blanket, toes are up, heels are down. And I would encourage you here to feel where you can touch downwards, whether it's a bolster, a block, okay? So you have an ability to connect to an object so you feel grounded in the arms, okay? I want you to have the arms on something. So the back is not squeezing in, it's reaching out of the tailbone. Now with the hips lifting up, with the head lowering down, the weight of your brain stretches the spine. If it's a deep pull into your calves, bend your knees. Release the rope of the back. Try to let the spinal column elongate down to the brainstem, like that's a whole rope that you're trying to let go. Now, as you lift up, walk the feet back, make your way back down to your knees, and then we'll set up for that side sage prep on the right hip down, okay? We're gonna revisit that in a little bit. So that's just a prep here for the back muscles. So I'm gonna set up my bolster right into the center, and when I lean to my right hip, what we'll do is take our block on the inside of that left leg and try to reach to our foot, okay? So we're kind of flipping through a couple of the parts of the session right now, just trying to make our way through to find where we're going. So if that left thigh connects to the front ray of the waist into that psoas, so that's going to be that deep inner layer. It's a hip flexor, right? So you'll notice when you have the foot drawing in that quad sensation. If you don't hold your ankle, no big deal. Turn your waist a little bit into that bolster. See if you can get your elbows on that to really get that deep pulley through the waist, that traction. This is good too. I feel like this is better for me right now. Sometimes holding onto the foot is, you know, it only gets a certain spot, right? And it's rather deep and tense. Tensor fascia. Okay. Now start to slide your way into that side stage. Keep it simple. Block on the inside of the leg or the ball. Simplify. Let the waist reach down. Actually, reach is probably too obvious, but we're trying to kind of slither the rib space down and then add some weight to that left outer side. Now remember, your weight that you add could be sand, it could be a bag of rice, it could be some sort of a weighted sack, you know, that's 5 to 10 pounds. So when that right knee is drawing up towards the bolster, this side, right, I'm working a bit with the chest muscles, the shoulder blend. You might have a block overhead, you might not, right? It might be with an easy reach. Depends on how you set it up. And if the variation here works for you to inspire the ribs to move with the breath. So find a centering position that you can breathe with and into, and then be there. Right, movement is spontaneous, and it's nice to have spontaneous kind of spurts of motion within your frame as you're studying the influence of the pose inside. Breathe slow. Exhale completely. You know, when you feel the natural arch of this hip, waist, rib, it's very cool, right? To slow this whole thing down. Now this left side has the most recent influence for the reach. So keep this in your brain box, your memory box. Maybe right before class, the meditation should be on creating the memory box for pose study. And have 4 little parts to that one, A, B, C, D in the box. So right now it's this whole side lane, okay? Now, let the left arm free up. Feel how you can rotate in. And this time we're actually going to be sitting up, but be easy on yourself since you're not with others, like having that observation that we all move with an easy glide. Really consider your wellness here, how you receive that. So I'm going to guide my knee in, and I'm going to roll my ribs into my bolster, and I'm going to come up the way I would like to get up out of bed. Okay, but I'm usually in a rush. And so let's try to take care of ourselves. So come up to sit on your bolster. I'm going to pivot a little in, but I'm going to do same side as you in the sequence so that I can have a little bit of conversation on this one. So what we'll do is we'll take a block between our feet, and the block's going to be at its very lowest setting, okay? I want you to push your feet clearly they have an element of push. That's an obvious awareness here. But when you're pushing in, how do the knees respond? Do they feel anything, or is it this adductor tissue? If your bolster is a little slippery, right, you might, this one, if you do this on another time, you can always do this on a stack of blankets so that your seat really sinks. You want to be able to kind of sink your seat without having to stress your the pelvic floor, right? You shouldn't be bearing down for this pressure. So I want you to try to push in. Now I'm going to move my feet forward and see what is best for my knees. So imagine that, let your hands push into the bolster or the floor if your arms are really long, or your blankets, right? You could guide them in a little closer if you prefer, okay? So I want you to try to push in with your feet, okay? Visualize that you could bring your feet off the floor with your block between, okay? Just visualize it. Remember, part of yoga practice, the visualization is key. That you're doing something different than you are, like the muscles will still congregate, okay? So as congregation. All right, now when you have this position, get a feel here, sliding the block in and forward, okay? So working with this. If you have a floor space that's adaptable to sliding, not too much sticky space, what might happen is your muscles get ahead of you and your feet slide in without holding the block. So catch yourself, especially be cautious of knee pressures. So when I pull in, this is about my comfort zone. If I pull too much farther inwards, it's bothering the knee. So you might stay with where it's pretty symmetrical, okay? Go inwards with the block towards the bolster. Stretch the right leg open and out. And then you're going to try to push this block into your right leg. I know you'll have to use your hands at some point, unless you're a creature that can move everything with your feet. But what you're going to do is see if you can turn that block so it's to its second setting, push it into the leg. Things we spend time doing, huh? Push it into the leg. So now this opens up the back. The idea is this block is a spacer. It was a spacer from the beginning of time. That was created, but right now it's a spacer for the lumbars. Okay, we're going to need our belt, and we'll need a sandbag and probably a ball under the left knee. If you have a block, use that, but the ball can be in the connective tissue where the knees form the fold. Right, we have that fold, just like when your arm folds in. Right, you can put that ball under there. Yeah. Elbows probably have a different sensation, right? The joint capsule is slightly different here. So knees, tend to have more issues than elbows. And they're holding our weight. So they're having different experience during the day, right? So take this posturing that the sand is on the top. And we're going to get a little curious with this belt. We're going to reach in the belt, lasso in the right foot. Hold on. Be sure the block is set. Now, if you don't like this mid setting, it's too much stretch for your inner thigh, then turn it to the lower setting, okay? If it's just that your thigh is feeling poked, right, it might be that you internally rotate your knee quite a bit during the day. So I would just slide the block a little bit farther down on your foot to touch it. And see if that will start helping this, the pattern if your knee tends to flip inwards versus turning out. Hold belt, right hand, and simply lean to your right side, sand on left thigh. And when I'm leaning down, I'm back to that side sage, right? I got a little bit of a memory card for that one now. So the side tissue, get into it so it's the glimmer of it, and you're really capturing the foot right to the mound of the right foot. And then you might feel when you tip into that right leg, the lumbars, that openness, and then into the thoracics. Okay, turn your head to your right leg. Let your left arm be anywhere USA in your room right now. So it could be out, could be moving back, could be on your body, but pull with your right hand. Right? Feel the response in the foot. Be active and proactive with getting as close to the foot with your hand as you can on the belt. And let's say you could hold your foot. Let's say you could grab it. Prefer the belt today so that you have the ability to stretch the calf a little bit, the footing, the web of the bottom of the foot, right? And recruit the bicep and that arm. Just simply get a feel here for your side tissues. Should feel kind of good. Head turns down. Breathe. Okay, now when you slide your hand on the belt, feel each incremental moment when you come up to sitting and when you already feel like you're sitting up. It doesn't take long, does it, to get upright. Now we're going to twist to our left with our right hand to the left knee. So kind of visualize how that would move, right? Visualize first. And then when I take away my hold on the belt, I'm going to try to keep my right foot flexed. Twist to the left hand back on my blanket. My blanket feels a little stacked up, so I'm going to lower it down. Don't need that much height. So when you're here, feel the connectivity of spine up, rib oscillation, feel rotation in the ribs. When you hold that knee, be sure that it still encounters the support under it. You have not taken it away from that ease. Okay? So we're using the hold to start to bring musculature coordination on our right side of our back. And I think it's really important to notice if you're holding your knee, it's almost like taking the easy road, right? So I'm still trying to recruit in my core muscles. So I'm trying to work on upright, not uptight, right? Not pulling the knee and doing all the work with grabbing it. So feel the turn, breathing. Okay, now as you unwind and come forward, let's do the simple thing. We'll take the belt off the foot, do the simple thing, and then cross the right foot in front of the left, take your block forwards, put it on the mid-height if possible, and then move your sand over to your right thigh. Okay, now I know some of you might not have a ball, so you might be using a block here, but if you have 2 blocks left over, we'll bring both of the blocks under your hands as you lean forwards. Take the leaning experience, kind of learn from this motion in our backs. Okay, so I want you to get as much of that feel of leaning forward, giving you a little bit of a side version of this. Different, but the same. Okay. So the sand pack is on the right leg. Okay, send the energy so it moves forward and down, and try to transfer the weight a little further. If your arms could center on your blocks, the low or the mid setting, you might try to center your elbows on your blocks. Head moves down. Neck feels some flexion. So a little bit of that roundation in the neck. And with the head nodding side to side, letting go. Okay, now fully motion, brain. So it's almost as if the forehead, right? That frontal lobe area is leaning forward so you could see in front of your blocks. Okay, now when you move your body back upright, depends on where your angles are right now. We'll keep our right leg with that sand, but I want you to stretch that left leg out, okay? Put the ball into the right knee, all right? And the block inside between the right foot and the left leg, okay? So I've got my block placed on its mid setting, right? So it's flat. It's a flat shape for the block. Yeah, and the second side could be different. If you have some wellness knee tissue issues, this is a nice thing to work with, this block on the inside layer. You know, especially if your thighs really kind of roll in, you have some feebleness sometimes in these parts of the leg for these poses, the block can kind of reinforce, right, the tissues and kind of hydrate them, kind of plump them up. So getting a hold of that foot with the belt, we're going to reach with our left hand, and then as I turn to the right, it's not that different than when you hold your knee and twist, right? It's similar zoning. And then I pull with my left elbow in my bicep and send the right arm over. Yeah, I'm just going kind of minimal here. I'm doing a very mild amount of prodding down towards my foot, but you could reach further and deeper, or you might keep it rather melodramatic. Right hand could go towards your back. Waist can elongate, so feel how the side tissues have their range of motion. And feel where there's that mild amount of rotation. Shoulder moves back. Now, when that left foot is pressing, I want you to maintain that pressure in the foot, but you're going to let go of the grip of the belt. So when you start to fluctuate your midsection to rising, which it only rises so tall, right, when you're sitting in a body. You could visualize it goes a little higher, but you know, at some point you find you're still upright. This is it. And then we turn right, left hand to the right knee or thigh. It just depends on your shoulder range, doesn't it? One side you might be really surprised that it's slightly, even just it could be a full inch or two, your range in your side of your back that's different for your flexibility in your upper back. So when you turn, I really encourage you to let that knee that the hand is trying to reach to, the right knee, try to keep that moving down to the ball or the block, so that these deep hip flexor, the psoas, you really want to feel, oh wow, it's kind of a musculature response there in my core chamber. Feel that it's almost trying to lengthen that space, not cramp it up and bear down, but lengthen that space. So you're holding, you're engaging, you're turning, and whistling away. So feel the rotation, feel the foot twist, not the foot twist. Keep it simple. Okay, unwind. If it felt pretty nourishing for your back and your spine felt happy with the twist, add some twisting during your day. Okay, come back center, okay? And then we're going to take that belt aside and take it simple. Cross the left foot forward to the right knee. Move any block objects that are kind of in your path. And then sand to left thigh. I've got my blocks. I'm going to set them both in the front, and I've got that ball still below my right knee. Yeah. Yeah, you might have a different object than this exact ball, and it might be similar size, and that's perfect. Something bigger than a tennis ball would be ideal. But when I lean forwards, I'm going to feel where my seat is kind of widening, not like I'm trying to push down to my sitting bones and bear down, but my sitting space feels wide. And then as I lean forward, the inner groin certainly stretches. I don't know where you exactly feel this, but it could be all isolated in your left buttock or your hip, inner thigh. So blocks are forwards today, and the elbows could be down. If that's not happening in your back muscles, yeah, it's about movement modalities and flushing out the tissues. So play with it when you can. Any old time. Fluffy fascia. Get it moving. You now feel where the arms are either reaching into the hands or the elbows are down. That roundness in the back is okay. So feel where the back, almost as if you have a cape on your back. Costume time. Cape on the back. You know, as my hands walk in onto the blocks, I'm going to shift entirely. So this leg branching has had some open patterns. So what we're going to do is move into a Viparita Upavista Konasana. Okay, so it's an inverted wide angle. So we're going to uncross and take Dandasana for a moment. Just feel the legs forward, staff pose, heels kind of scrubbing the floor, reaching front. Have the sand high up, almost as if you're wearing it in your lap, like you're about ready to put it on as a pack around your belly. Okay, and then just get a feeling of your back muscles, the arch into your lower back. Okay, now as you lower onto your back, I want you to shed the sand. Have one blanket at your back, okay, actually under your head. And so when you lower down, you'll need your belt, okay? You're gonna buckle it up when you're sitting upright because our brains maybe work differently when they're upside down with getting things to cooperate. So I got a wide loop. Okay, and it'll match the Baddha Konasana loop. So when I lower back, it's the rule of the ribs. So I want to have a little more rib support on my actually on my bolster than maybe I've tended towards. So if you were to reach your buttocks, they kind of feel like they're almost on the other side of the bolster. We're all different, but you might find that starts to create some openness in your back. And the idea is to support the immune system. So when we take our belt, let's get busy in the pose, bring the belt around your feet, push your feet out, and have the wide span. So my feet have my belt, right? My belt is on each foot, and I pushed my feet out. Everyone can obviously observe in their legs. My knees, I want to keep that flesh of the knees so I can easily see my kneecaps. My feet push out, and then I'll move my elbows out to goalpost. Okay? Yeah, let the roots of the toes start to, well, actually the foot soften. So no requirement to push back and flex. Feel the version of the toes turning in here. So the knees start to mold into that shape just as well. Okay, now with your knees bending, your hands ascending to your belt, slide the feet together and hold onto the belt as if you're pulling your belt to your heart. Get a feel of that straight leg, but have a hold of the belt like it's a little bit of a muscular exercise, pulling it. Push your feet out one more time. Let the belt go, arms go back to goalpost. Yeah. Feel if the legs have a strength to them. Belly soft. Soft belly is a strong belly, so maintain that frequent motion in the core. Bend your knees. Feel them really bend. And then reach up to your belt. Hold on. Maybe go like without really staring to it. Go for feel. And then slide your feet in. You might notice your sensations are a little different. If you close your eyes sometimes, it might be a little more intense. Just kind of getting your way around without the eyes, pressure around the eyeballs. And then as you bend your knees, okay, you're going to slide your belt off of your feet. And then you'll take a sandbag. And I want you to place that so when it's on your feet and you lift them up, the muscles at the backs of the legs are toned, right? So they're contracting. So in this phase, we're going to be pushing up into our feet, flexing, and then feel that natural arch in the spine, noticing the arch path. And can you take this pose today, the Viparita Karani pose, with a belt, right? So the belt's not going to be around the legs today. It's going to be with your arms, okay? So what you'll do is you'll take the belt, and I think if you have it still buckled up, if it's still in a loop, we can't sit up to figure this out. We'll do it on our backs. Okay, I'm going to make this loop so it's quite small. It's shoulder width. I'll be a little generous, a little more than shoulder width so my arms won't get too tired. Okay, so you're going to bring your arms through the belt. So the belt is at the, make sure the buckle's not bothering one of your limbs. Belt is through. If it's got a little twist in it, don't get too fanatic about fixing that. But your arms are fixed into this, shoulder width frame. And then move your arms back overhead. Yeah. So you've got these interesting connectors between the sand, the solid circulation in the legs, the arms. You can always get out of the belt if you don't like it. And when the arms are back, kind of notice the side ribs and that flesh, the flesh kind of nest of the ribs, trying to move it and lengthen. Right now, try to get long in the waist. Having the belt actually gives you an incentive to do that, right? If you just kind of flopped them back, in time they may loosen, but this gives you a required awareness. Besides, you have sand on your feet, you can't just drop them. Bend your knees. Slow them down. Feel the knees bending towards your upper ribs. That means even the collarbone, so it's quite squishy in the belly. And the chest almost squishy. And then push your feet straight up. Okay, try to consider verticality here. So when I bend my knees, I don't have my arms to help me. Even though you don't think you use them when your arms are by your sides, you kind of use their momentum into the ribs. So take a couple more of these leg presses, pushing, and find the connection, even if it helps you close your eyes to really scan it, from your seat through the lines of energy of the back of the legs to the back of the knee, and then we go up into the feet and we flex them. Okay. I know that's the most exciting thing you thought about this morning, huh? So last time you come up with your feet, You didn't come up with your feet, but they're moving up. Okay, flex them, and the knees might be turning out a little better than they were in the beginning. Maybe you didn't notice, but likely they improve over a couple minutes. There's hope. Hope for you. Okay, so move the arms out of the belt, but hold the belt, right? So I kind of slid out, but now I'm holding. All right, and then we keep the arms reaching back and we engage in the side ribs, lengthen, 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 bend your knees, let go of your belt, get your sand, take it away, sand, and then when my knees center up, I'm gonna grab a ball or block, you choose. And I'm gonna start to scoot my bolster a little bit. So what I'll do is put my feet down, because that's the only way to do this. And maybe not the only way, but one way. You're going to push the bolster a little bit down so it feels like it really is under your rear. Like my rear is on that bolster. Okay, get cozy. Knees up. And then we're going to move the legs side to side in what's an elevated reclining twist series. This is in the Relax and Renew Judith Lassiter series, part of the set. So as we move side to side, we get a feel of our leg to the knee bone squeezing into that ball or block. Again, it's like a spacer for your lower back, just like the block was when it was between your feet. These are just simply extremities you have below your pelvis, right? And they can be quite useful to help out the bands in the mid-body, the diaphragmatic band, the low back. So go slow as you like. You get to be the decider on pace. You're the pacemaker. So get a feel now. If your weight is moving into the upper piece of the leg, close to the hip bone, notice that. I want you to really feel that touch with the bolster. Persuade yourself to get a little more range of motion each time the knees sway over to the side. If you need a stopper, right, like a block on the next to your legs so you don't drop over, you can add a block besides the bolster. Yeah, we're going to give ourselves about another half minute for this one. So don't check out quite yet. Give your back time to flush out around the kidneys. And then when we come back in the middle, we handle the bolster with pushing it, knees to chest. Push the bolster forward. Slide your bolster enough in front of you that you can put your feet onto it. Okay? So when you do place your feet, I have my arms beside me, and I'm going to start to work my way into bridge pose. So you're going to lift up your hips. And the caution here is my knees not going over my toe line, right? So you want to get a feel for how do your knees connect into the ball or the block between them, and then lower the spine down, okay? Tender moments in with the back here. So as we lift up the hips, I would pass on going fast. Feel the full arch of the back. And then as you launch and lift up your hips, you can move your blanket away from under you if that's kind of interrupting the flow into your neck, and lift up your arms back overhead, so full drawbridge, and then guide your spine down. All the way through that natural arch. Push down. Lift your hips, bring your arms overhead. Guide the reach of the limbs. Breathe. And then lower down. And observe, this is more of a movement cycle than giving it an asana name. A lot of the practice that I lead is based on asanas, but I want you to notice that instead of visualizing bridge pose, and you may have some ideas of what is bridge pose. Feel that this is a lead, this is a wave of moving the body, it's drawbridge. And when I lift up my hips, how can I make that position with the hips lifting as high as they'll go so I feel my chest move a little bit towards my chin, right? I'm not trying to let my chin push to my chest, so my cervical vertebrae has this nice circulation. I think that's important to know that bridge can be helpful for our spine. It's a spine massage when we're moving in it up and down, but also it's helpful for our cervical vertebrae, right? The neck awareness. So take caution, go slow, let it help you. And then when we lower down, next time you get there, no rush. Clear your space on the right side of your mat. So if you've got a blanket over there, you might use it anyway. And then when the knees go in, I want you to actually put your feet, scoot your bolster to your right, if you can multitask here. So it's right straight to the side of your mat lengthwise. Put your feet down and squeeze the ball or block, squeeze and relax the grip. Take a few alternating pulses squeezing the block or the ball, okay? So feel that magnetism right into the adductors. And then we start to slide our feet close to our buttocks, lift up the knees, the feet off the floor. And then the knees are already up, but take the feet up, move the ball, and stretch the right leg down. I'm going to encourage you to have a blanket under your head for this one for certain. So place the blanket under head, cross the left leg to the bolster and tuck in a ball, or if you don't want to use anything at your sacrum, that's fine, okay? So the height under my left leg is not quite enough, like my knee is a little bit up. So I'm gonna take my blanket, I'm gonna kind of stuff it in there. I don't need a lot, then I don't need the whole bolster to have it, but enough that my leg can relax, okay? So add a sandbag to the exterior to affect your kind of interior leg and fuss about with your props. It's okay, but we do want to find a settling position. So once you've fussed enough, stretch open the left arm. Yep. Bend your right knee if you like. This will enhance the fluidity in the core muscles, right? A little bit into that psoas space. But also you'll feel the rich amount of pressure in the back ribs, the twist. Yeah, let the arms center open, the heart. Turn your head left and relax your eyes, especially balancing the shoulders. They don't have to be high, they could be kind of low. Now with the breath and its traction across the width of the upper limbs, that includes the width down to the heart. Notice where you feel the width kind of narrow, if it's around the heart space, right? See if you can visualize that space opening, just for your self-care. Now as we move the ball, if you have that, the sand might slide on its own, because the ball really does kind of hold that process of moving across from the sacrum across the back of the legs. It's interesting what that does. Now when I move to change sides, I'm going to take the left foot, cross it to the right knee, and just spend a second there. It's not going to be a long hold. And then start to get my bolster to my left side of my mat. The setup I have with my blankie. Might need it on the second side. Feel the left knee open. You might put your hand there to encourage it to stretch out the inner thigh, right at the attachment zone, high up on the adductor, closer towards where you can feel those ligament spaces are kind of grappling for any stretch they can get. Stretch me. Your body cries, stretch me. Lower the left leg down and then cross the right leg over to the bolster. Okay, simplify. Right, now you might notice if you guide your mind and tell your body straight left leg, cross over, it's different than if I kind of roll into it. Right, so this is easier, rolling into it, straight leg, cross over, a little more guarded. So we're restoring. So find what works for you. Remember, you might use the ball to the sacrum. You might grab your sand to your exterior leg. It's not required. None of this is a requirement. Breathing is your primary focal point. But as your right arm spreads open, feel your head turn to the right. Now gather movement from your neck across. Get that feel where the spine is in direct relationship to the hip. Kind of notice the connectivity of your spine base and then how that kind of energetically fans out, right? Think of it as the basket weave of the back of the pelvis, how those muscles and structural bones are shaped, they go out. So when we do change, what I'm going to have us do is a few pose patterns that are low lunges, right? So as work, hip flexor opening, and then we'll transfer in about 4 or 5 minutes into our final pose. But I want us to have a little frenzy of that before we get on our back, so we kind of have enough cycling through our core consciousness, you could say. Now slide the ball away. Yeah, sand might fall, it might not. We're different on each layer sometimes. Unwind. Slide left foot in on floor, right knee open, push into the leg. Notice this right leg. Keep it in your little memory card. We'll come back to it. It's a good thing to do. We have our little body crossword puzzles we're doing. Okay. So, get a feel for that thigh structure. Don't lose our energy quite yet here. As you bring your knees in, you're going to simply hold on and roll up. Okay? So take a blanket from back, just a moment here, blanket, and I want you to lift up, crawl up onto that blanket so it's under your knees. Take a bolster in front, okay? Take a couple blocks. Take a step out with the right foot to the top right corner of your mat, so you're already into that thigh. Yeah, so we're working back to the front groin here. So I get a feel for the quad lengthening down. So work that thigh so it's structurally down. Avoid the right knee going over the toe, so it's turned out foot, but you can manage the weight into the heel bone. So you might feel direct access to the right inner thigh. because of that press of the foot. Interestingly, when we had our block between our feet in Baddha Konasana, there's this action we're trying to create, but it's really hard to do when you're sitting with your spine up and your sitting bones down. But we're pretending we can do that. So feel this. Okay. Change. Right knee in, left foot to that top left corner. Use your blocks under your hands. Feel that sway in the back, right? It's almost like a connecting bridge in your back. It's kind of nice. I imagine you all have a nice lunge here. I'll visualize a happy group lunge. Lunges before lunch. Okay. So get that feel for that left thigh open. Now take both thighs back, both blocks flat, besides your bolster, stuff them in, and then lengthen that core. Lift up the waist, right? Lower down like you're moving into a arm strengthening chaturanga-ish pattern. So my hands are on blocks, my elbows are clipped in towards my sides. Heart forward, push to lift up. Try to let the belly relax here and use the arms. Strong tone. Okay, so toes under, shift. Okay, now we're going to take this into a full supported bridge pose, a long supported bridge pose. Doesn't mean long time, but a lengthening. So what I'm going to have you do is place your body to sit on the edge of your bolster, so crawl forwards. Belt is an option here. I don't want us to require too many prop setups, but the key here is that I'm sitting on the edge of my bolster to the other side. So I have all these lunge patterns. We'll add them up into this final Shavasana. I have my blocks in the front. I'm going to step on them. I don't want my blocks too far in because I want my feet to rest on them. So what you're going to try for is you're going to lower back. Remember, you don't want the blocks too far forwards. Okay, you're going to lower back. And then as you lower back, the key here is, we'll go belt free, is my blanket right now is stuffed kind of close in, okay? That is an option to kind of learn this pattern. Now I want you to really focus on this whole front ridge lengthening. Try to get the legs close. If you've had this practice before and you want to buckle up the thighs so they don't turn out, go for it. But the key is that your shoulder blades, if you can slide your blanket all the way back so it's just under your occipital ridge, so center back of the brain would be ideal if you can monitor that. So that C7 is off of the floor, so you're not jamming your neck whatsoever. It's not a deep neck flexion. It is not at all. The chest is open towards the chin, and you spread the heart and let the mind center back. If you want to add sand across your hip bones, go for it. If you're comfortable here, no reason to add stuff and move your props around. Just be and feel the connection in the front of the body, that ray of awareness in the core chamber. Yeah, almost as if the ribs have this kind of shape of stretching out where the ribs intersect are at the base of the sternum, and now where they're at the base of the ribs, and then the whole belly is below that space where there's no ribs attached. And that we want to be soft. Widen the ribs, relax the feet. Breathe in. Empty your lungs. Now feeling possibly the tailbone is kind of narrowing in this pose. You're on a fairly narrow support underneath you. So with that wave of awareness through the front lines of the body, through the front spine, open the heart. And let yourself sink in for a few more moments, witnessing the vulnerability with the body and the receptivity, supporting that drainage of lymph. It's actually quite nice to drain the fluid in the legs a little bit this way. It's a mild inversion. It's not technically a clear head below heart pose, but it is head below abdominal organs pose. So it is a mild inversion. Good for the immune system. Requiring breath. Now, if you're free of props holding your legs, first remove any of those, then walk the feet to bend the knees and get a feel of that balance of the feet. So when they press down, I want you to be lifting your hips, but as I come back, you can either slide back and then carefully move your blanket or your neck. You have to be careful of your shirt up towards your chest, your throat. You might walk your feet in and then scoot the bolster forwards too, right? And you can sit on the bolster a little bit. You can let your legs step up on it, let the legs lengthen. This would be another phase we could do, right? And if we had a longer amount of time and start to go into Shavasana here, right? The legs elevated. But in this pattern, we'll simply move our feet in, knees primed up, and then let the hip bones help move your knees to one side, and then let your hands bring you up. Take a seated shape. Maybe you can structurally find a bolster or a blanket to sit on top of. And then let's transition into this collective consciousness, feeling the support, hands on legs, palms open, and let the shoulders branch back to open up the lines of the upper heart up towards the vocal cords. Pause for a moment, let your brain rest down towards your heart center. Breathing in support for your practice. Hands merge up in front of the heart, palms press. Gather your attention in, receiving the breath. And then with an exhalation together, bowing into the space behind your heart. Gratitude, namaste. Okay, thank you.